Genshin impacts artifacts. Sometimes we love them, nearly always we hate them, especially when the right subset remains untouched.
Worthless as expected.
Anyway, there is something interesting about artifacts though, and that is lore. You see, every artifact set has been a set of items originally used by an individual in the past. The most popular probably being the Crimson Witch set, which has been used by Rosalind Krutzka lore fighter, aka La Signora. Many people don't seem to know about all these hidden lores. So here I am to tell you about these original heroes we never got to meet. Oh well, sometimes we did. So, welcome to the very first episode of Powers from the Past, a new video series where we look at artifacts and the interesting lore they hold. At least we would do that if not for a theory we have to discuss first. A theory I saw nobody talk about before, so mayhaps I am the only one who noticed these details. Anyway, I'm very excited to share this with you. Now to get started, let's talk about the beginning of Teyvat. Yes, we have to go so far back. Originally, dragons have been the primary race in Teyvat. They have been ruled by 7 sovereign. This word is very hard for me to pronounce, I'm just gonna call them Dragon Lords, and I hope that's okay. Each of these Dragon Lords had control over one element. Anemo, Geo, you know them by now. Then the primordial one appeared. In Economia, we can get our hands at a book called Before Sun and Moon. In there is a name given to the primordial one. Phanes. This is the only mention of this name so far, but I will continue to use it here. Phanes is described as an androgynous being with wings and a crown. Similar to their ancient Greek name giver, they emerged from an egg. They created 4 shining shades of themselves and fought with these against the Dragon Lords, eventually emerging as the winner. The remaining dragons escaped into the ocean. What follows is a bunch of lore I won't go into detail here. All you need to know is that Phanes and Shades made the world as we know it today. But 400 years later, a new being arrived. The Second Who Came, also known as the Second Throne of the Heavens. There was a conflict between the second one and Phanes and their gang, and while we can't say for certain who won, I highly assume that it was the second being, who is assumed to be the unknown god fighting the twins in the beginning of the game. My reasoning being that the only place we learn about all this is in Economia, a place seemingly not as much influenced by Irminsul. As we know, winners write history, so it isn't surprising that the winner might have removed some passages about the old rulers from Irminsul. But as we know, only memories change, not the past itself. Now let's talk about Phanes and their shades. We know 2 of them. First of all, there's Ishtaroth, the Shade of Time, also known as the God of Time and Wind. She was once worshipped alongside Venti in Mondstadt. Again, we can't be sure what happened to her, but there is a theory that Venti might have a bigger connection to her since she was known as Thousand Winds, while Venti, or Barbados, is called a threat among the Thousand Winds. Nameless remains the Shade of Life, who helped Phanes to create all kinds of living beings. Thanks to the Fontaine Windglider lore, we know that she was also the creator of Egeria, the first Hydro Archon. So who could be the other 2 shades? Why not mirror images of the ones we already have? Let's go easy first and start with the opposite to life, the Shade of Death. The concept of death would keep the world from being overrun by living beings, but it would also introduce laws into the world, like a limited lifespan, but also goals and motivation to all living beings, for them to reach achievements before their lifespan runs out. And when we talk about the opposite, we of course look at Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. I'm only partially kidding. Obviously, the opposite to time would be the absence of time, which is pretty hard to imagine. I mean, time is everywhere. All the time. Literally. This means that in a lot of media, people have come up with a better opposite to time, like Pokemon did. Or just remember Doctor Who, in which an alien named the Doctor has a ship named TARDIS, time and relative dimensions in space, aka time travel and space travel. With other words, pop culture kinda just connected space and time with each other, and that's how they turned into opposites over time. Pun intended. Or maybe there is a valid explanation thanks to space-time, but I'm gonna be honest here, my science grades have always been horrific. I'm not gonna touch that here. So now we have Phanes, Ishtaroth, the Shade of Time, Shade of Life, Shade of Death, and Shade of Space. So what the hell does this have to do with artifacts? Nearly every set has 5 parts to it. the flower of life, the plum of death, the sands of Aeon, the goblet of Aeonothem, and the circlet of Logos. I think you know where this is going, so let's do it quick. Flowers obviously resemble life, especially when called flowers of life, so they resemble the shade of life. Feathers are heavily used in trials in the afterlife in ancient Egypt mythology, so the plum of death resembles the shade of death. Even though they are called sands, only a few of these actually involve sand. Most of them are a form of clock, watch, hourglass, even a sundial exists. So the sands of Aeon resemble the shade of time, Ishtaroth. Goblets can hold something, they can be filled, they can hold space. So the goblets resemble the shade of space. Phanes is the creator of the shades and probably their leader. They have a crown. The circlet resembles Phanes. Can you tell that I'm writing the script at a time I should probably be asleep? Good night. Yes, this is really what the script read. I wrote this down. Let's continue. Because I'm not done yet. Turns out this really is actually the first episode of Powers from the Past. And the first artifacts we will talk about here will be the Prayers series. The Prayer artifacts are among the early game artifacts, their rarity being 3 and 4 stars. They can only be dropped by overworld bosses and are the only artifacts that work as single pieces. For anyone who forgot, the majority of artifact sets have a 2-piece and a 4-piece effect. 2-piece gives a simple bonus like 20% attack, while 4-piece gives a more complex bonus, like giving you 20% attack and damage bonus when running in a circle for 3 seconds. The only exceptions to this rule are very early artifacts and the Prayer Quartet. But why? Well, let's look at the most obvious thing first, the design. All the circlets are made out of silver branches, with leaf-like gems connected that resemble the color of the element they work with. They help you to be affected by the element for 40% less time. The 4 elements in question are Electro, Hydro, Pyro and Cryo. The effect they have originates from their original usage, being worn by people who offered sacrifices in ancient times. Looking through the lore of these 4 circlets, I noticed that they seem similar and yet different at the same time. They basically explain how the elemental power of a piece made the world livable, and how the humans used to connect with the heavens more directly. But eventually, for different reasons, or no reason at all, they haven't stopped responding. And so an individual with a white branched crown looks for a silver tree in a deep place. In a nutshell, the gods stop responding and some humans try to find them by entering domains. And that makes sense, most domains do look like places of worship. Perhaps places in which Phanes and the Shades got worshipped? Speaking of trees, thanks to Albedo we know that the domain trees are rather young.
Actually, the petrified trees you have come across in domains aren't that ancient. Truly ancient trees usually grow to around 1 or 2 miles in height.
This makes me assume 2 things. First of all, that they are the same kind of tree as Irminsul. Second of all, that they might have been planted by the creators of these domains. If Irminsul always existed, these might be seedlings, allowing people to connect to Irminsul and by that to the gods. And of course, then the religious leaders would wear tiaras that resemble both the trees and their head god. Remember, Phanes has a crown. Anyway, there's one last question. What happened to those who ventured there? And why did the heavens stop responding in the first place? Let's start with the latter. I assume this is an example of different cultures witnessing the same phenomenon, assuming different things are to blame. For example, the people behind Prayers of Wisdom tried to challenge the heavens, which then remained quiet. They blamed their own curiosity. What really happened though, and again, that is just by assumption, is simply that Phanes and the Shades got defeated by the Second Throne, aka the unknown god from the beginning, and by that, they no longer respond to the humans. About the other question, what happened to the individuals that started looking for the Shades? Well, I assume instead of reaching one of their old gods, they reached the unknown god, who then banished them into the abyss. Why the abyss? Well, if we look at the elements of the circlet again, we have Electro, Hydro, Pyro and Cryo. These are the same elements used by the abyss. There are a handful of exceptions, but these have confirmed connections to Canria, like being Rheindotir's creations or part of the royal army. But who says that Canrian folk was the first one to arrive in the Abyss? Maybe some people have already been living there. Maybe even some gods? Yes, not only are the shades connected to the artifact sets in general, but also the prayer artifact sets. My correct theory is that Thanos, the Shade of Life, the Shade of Death, and the Shade of Space all remain in the Abyss, giving their own elemental powers to them so they can fight. But what about Ishtarov? Well, in hydrological studies, we learn of a being called Tokoyo Okami, and how they are also called the Thousand Winds of Time, that being helping the people of Enkonomia after the arrival of the Second Throne. Furthermore, there's also the Thousand Winds Temple in Mondstadt, definitely built in Ishtarov's name. My personal theory is that after the defeat of the Shades, Ishtarov was the only one agreeing to the Second Throne's terms, by that remaining somewhat free while the rest of the Shades have been banished to the Abyss. This is also the reason that she's still the somewhat most prominent one in history, while everyone else got wiped from it. Since Ishtarov has connection to the animal element, it makes sense that her element would be missing from the circuits. The 4 remaining could be given to the other shades. Prayers of Destiny for the Shade of Life, who created the future Hydro Archon. Prayers of Wisdom to the Shade of Space, since their people craved so much wisdom, like a cup that could never be filled. Prayers of Springtime for the Shade of Death, the lore of this artifact talking about the fragility of life. And of course, Prayers of Illumination for Thanos themselves, their name being literally translated to the Glowing One, and with a circlet mentioning some altars of sacrifice. This is at least my theory about this. I might be right, I might be wrong, or I might even have forgotten something. Anyway, if you liked this video, please give it a like. If you didn't like it, or think I forgot something, please tell me kindly what bothered you in the comments. This is my first video of that kind, and while it was a lot of fun, it also took a lot of work, so every bit of appreciation would be very nice. Now, before wrapping up this video, let me quickly thank my Patreons, especially the Aquarium tier, which would be 99 Flower 99, and the Pool tier, which is the one and only Oleander Alchemist. In general, thank you to all my Patreon supporters and also the viewers from my second channel, which I know is like so much bigger than this one. Sorry that my upload schedule hasn't been the best recently, but you know, I have some health issues going on right now, and also I have to move pretty soon, and I'm still looking for a flat, so that is a bit complicated. I keep you guys up to date, and most of you are very accepting of me taking my time, and I highly appreciate you guys being there and just waiting for me to come back. Yeah, furthermore, I would also like to thank ABD Illustrates, who actually motivated me to try out this video, because they uploaded their own Genshin Theory a couple weeks back, which was pretty solid and amazing, not gonna lie. I probably will link the video and the account down below, please check them out. Then I would also like to thank Hina the Blue, who suggested Powers from the Past as the title of this video series. Sorry to the people behind the game Hades, but yeah, I use sprites from that game to basically depict the shades and Thanos. I'm not sure if I pronounced the name right, but like these 5 silhouettes that you saw that have been from Hades, just a bit edited, so you know, Sophinas had wings. I think that's all for credits. Obviously the music you guys can see in the video every time a new track starts. There's a slide in which music is playing right now. Have a good day, good night, whatever time it is for you, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!